Hey, thanks for joining us today on Uptime Logistics. It's powered by CAP Logistics, and I'm your host, Doug Draper with the Denver Transportation Club. Today we have an amazing guest with us. We're excited to have Chip. Just keep it short and sweet, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's so many Michaels wherever I go, and ultimately I end up calling me Chip. So
nice. Perfect.
I now introduce myself as Chip. So.
There you go. So today's we're going to talk about kind of mission critical logistics in a broader scope, but also in the airline and aviation industry. So that's we're pretty excited about it. One thing, Chip, we like to do before we get into our topic is learn a little bit about our guest. So tell us about yourself, kind of how you got in the logistics business, and we'll just start from there.
Sure. Back in 1990, I'm dating myself. That's when I joined the military. I joined the Army, active duty. I did 10 years. Initially, I was what's called Hawk Air Defense Artillery. And I don't know if you guys remember the first Gulf War. There was a missile called the Patriot. It was known as a Scud Buster. And so this is what actually, won the war. It's a 100-hour war, and it won the war. And so I had to transfer over from my Hawk missile to a different MOS, which is a military occupational specialty. They looked at my transcript, my college transcript, and they said, hey, instead of going to the desert every year for 6 months and being on a Patriot missile, we see that you have a lot of music courses. So would you rather be interested in joining the band? I said, let me think about that. We got combat versus the band, the Army band. And so I did the remainder of my 6 years as in the Army band, but you don't do that really full time. You also have additional duties. And so one of the things that I took on was the logistics and supply chain management and material movement. And that was really my first introduction into the logistical field. Once I got out of the military, I started working in Kuwait with KBR, Kellogg, Brown and Root, and it was a logistical position. And then did that for about a year, and then I came back, and then I went back to Afghanistan for 5 years, and that was pretty, and we'll go into more detail about that. Yeah. But yeah, Afghanistan running logistics management for KBR and for Northrop Grumman, and that was pretty interesting, pretty exciting, pretty scary, but I'm glad I survived it. And then once I got out of that, I joined the airline industry, and into now what I am the AOG Manager, which is aircraft on ground.
It's terrific. So, all right, we got to ask, when you say band, I was going to say drummer or guitarist. Now, I know there's no guitars in the band, so what instrument do you play?
There actually are.
What's your instrument of choice?
I play the piano. And as you mentioned, you're probably referring to the marching band. You don't see, if you're a rhythm instrument, electric guitar, bass guitar, piano, you don't see these guys marching with a piano on it. So you do what's called the auxiliary percussion. These are the guys that you'll see playing the bass drum or playing the cymbals or whatever the case may be. It was really fun, really exciting. Had a great time.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, the mission critical logistics, we can kind of talk about the military aspect of it, and then, compare and contrast in the civilian mission critical. So on the military side, you hear it's kind of like the lifeblood of the military to kind of keep things, moving forward. So why would that term be used? Tell me about why they call it the lifeblood of the military, and maybe a couple of examples that would help explain that to our audience.
Sure. So in the military, when I was in Afghanistan, I was in charge of shipping blood supplies, ammunition. There's an acronym called TIC, which stands for Troops in Contact. So whenever you have the sailors, you have the airmen, you have the soldiers, you have the Marines that are actually in contact with the enemy, with the Taliban. And so they're running low on ammunition, or you have those who are wounded in the battlefield. And so we have to get them blood supply, and we have to get them a restock of ammunition. And so there, if we fail to do our mission, worst case scenario is that, the tide turns and now we're losing the battle. In worst case scenario, we're talking life or death. And so there in the military, it was really critical to just get it there. I noticed that in the civilian world, we have so many, we have rules, we have legal aspects that we have to worry about. But now in the military, it's like, no, just get it there. And that's what we really focused on. And so it is very critical. that we succeed in doing, what we're tasked to do.
Very good. Do you think, when you say mission critical, the average person may say, okay, we need to get weapons and ammunition and kind of the things used in the moment of combat. But I'd think that there's so many things behind the scenes, like blood. I never would have thought of that until you mentioned it. So do you think that kind of the behind the scenes logistics to support is as critical or even more critical than making sure that our troops have the right gun or device in their hands for combat?
Yeah. It's equally as critical, Doug. It really is, because if we're required, if they're saying, okay, we're low on ammunition, if we do not have the ammunition to ship to them, we have mission failure. And so it's really a lot depends on those who are back here in the States. It starts with those manufacturing the ammunition, those in charge of the shipping, coordinating the material movement to go from United States to overseas, make sure that we actually have it in stock so that we can ship. So it's a lot more. You're absolutely correct. There's a lot more to it than simply, okay, here, we're going to ship this to you right away. But again, if we don't have that material, if we don't have that parts, if we don't have the ammunition, we can't move it.
Right.
So there is a back end to it, the back logistics.
Yeah.
And inventory.
Did you find that? So I'm good at visuals, right? So this helps me answer my question succinctly. So FedEx is like a closed loop, right? They own the drivers and they make the deliveries, where Amazon would be kind of an open loop because they're using all kinds of other people. They're not Amazon employees necessarily making deliveries. On that mission critical with the military, did you find that you wanted to keep it closed looped and you wanted to use military assets and government equipment and support to move those, or did you rely more on third-party type of carriers that would be? We did rely
on third-party carriers. Unfortunately, the military just did not have the bandwidth. They did not have the manpower to support the entire supply chain. So that's where the civilian contractor comes in. And so it could be, various companies, various shipping companies, couriers. We had DHL, we had FedEx, like you mentioned. They were all part of that supply chain, all part of that movement. And sometimes it becomes frustrating, because you try to create a sense of urgency, to someone who's not in the combat zone, and they just don't get it. And they don't understand. Okay, look here, guys, this is happening right now. We need to make this, make sure that all our steps are in place.
Yeah, that's interesting. So flipping over from the military side, obviously sense of urgency. It all depends on what's urgent to yourself, right? Somebody trying to make a wedding or ship a gift is equally urgent in their mind, right? So let's flip over to kind of what the mission critical means on the civilian side. And obviously you're in, aircraft on ground. And now, so before we get into the civilian side, tell us what AOG means and kind of give the audience a quick lesson on those terms.
When you ask that question, man, I have to laugh, because I never really applied for the position that I have now. Originally, I applied for project management of IT. Didn't get the position, Doug. And so that hiring manager, he transfers my resume to the hiring manager for the AOG manager. And as the AOG manager calls me, he says, hey, you know what? I think I have this position that you'll be perfect for. I'm actually Googling, what is AOG? He said, what is AOG? And so AOG is aircraft on ground. What it involves is whenever one of the aircraft in the fleet is grounded for, say, like a material requirement or a mechanical defect, it's the team's responsibility, which is a 24/7 operation, is to go out and find the part. Find the part through sourcing. We have a list of vendors that we go through, approved vendors that we have to go through. And once we've located that part, we have to coordinate the movement of that part to the grounded aircraft. Every time we ground an aircraft, potentially, let's say the aircraft was the first flight, I was called the head start, the first flight of the day, and it had like maybe 6 or 7 legs to it. And so if you add that up, we're looking at easily a $300,000 loss of revenue. So there's a huge financial impact to that. So with those types of figures, not to mention the customer satisfaction piece, where you cancel, like you indicated. Here we are. We have people who are going to weddings. You have people that are going to funerals. These are events that cannot be repeated. And so it may not seem as critical as in the war zone, but it's still equally important to these guys if they go ahead and make these events. But you had that customer satisfaction when we cancel a flight, they'll say, you know what, I'll never ever fly this airline again. And so that's really important. That's really important. It's really critical.
Yeah. I think you hit it right there that, things happen, but if you're not responsive, people will say, oh, this is the worst experience ever. You should never fly the airline. So I completely get it.
Yeah. So we had 230 passengers, stranded at the airport. And they're screaming, okay, why is it this, why am I stuck here? And honestly, there are times when I first started this position as AOG Manager, I'm like, you know what, I think I'm feeling more stressed than I did in the war zone. It was so intense. It's really intense.
Probably don't want to tell them the little part that's not,
Right.
You're waiting for a switch that does this, and
because it costs $7, and so there's a lot involved. If there's a case where, again, the 300,000 loss of revenue, and sometimes it could be a rivet that's from that's fallen off the cow. Of course, it's required to be there. All rivets are required to be in place. The rivet may cost $7, $12, I don't know, but we will charter. We will spend $40,000 on a charter to get that $7 rivet to the aircraft so that we can, avoid that $300,000 loss of revenue.
So using a part, which I think is a great analogy, whenever you need to find that rivet, right? I'm sure you can purchase it many different ways.
At Walmart.
Yeah, different ways, different people. What's the thought process? Do you immediately go to a spare parts bank that we use, and then you say, okay, who's the vendor that's closest, and then just kind of work out? Like, how do you select the right part?
Right. Ideally, based on where the aircraft is grounded, we'll start sourcing locally. And the reason I joke and laugh, I say at Walmart, because often the very same rivet that we're trying to source, we can purchase through Walmart, or we can go down to the Home Depot, and it's actually there, but because it's not an FAA approved vendor, we can't purchase it there. And so we do have to go through a list of approved vendors that we have, which can be challenging. It presents a challenging task because, again, that's based off their availability, where they're located. And then once we located it, now we have to arrange coordinate the movement of it to the aircraft, to the grounded aircraft. And that may involve a courier. It may involve often, putting it on a different aircraft that's flying to that same location. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot that we have to consider when sourcing for that part.
Yeah.
And then you have what's called the crew timeout. The FAA says that a pilot and the crew has to receive X amount of hours of sleep. And so that's another factor. Say, if we can't get the part in time, it's known as the crew timed out. Okay, now we have to get with crew scheduling. They have to go out and find a whole new pilot, a whole new crew. And if they can't do that, again, we're talking cancellation of flight.
Wow. So in that instance, if the crew times out, you have the part, it's been fixed, but if the crew times out, you still can't leave.
Can't leave. We can't leave unless they find another crew.
Interesting. And of course, there's backup crews everywhere, right?
Yeah, of course, man. It's just a dime a dozen.
Exactly. Something that just popped in my mind, whenever that part comes, right? We've been using the rivet as an example. Do you test it before you put it into the plane, or like it just?
No, it's not a testing. It's called. We have a department called Receive and Inspection. So inspections, they have a series of checklists that they have to go through, and all of it's paperwork saying that, okay, this is from an approved vendor, the manufacturer, and they have a requirement. Once they see that that part meets that requirement, it's good to go. They give their sample of approval, and they'll hand it off to the mechanics, and the mechanics go ahead and install the part on the aircraft.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it seems in this day and age, having discussions, you have to bring in COVID and the realities that we are with the pandemic. And this is a really broad question, so I'll try to narrow it down, but how has the pandemic we're living in changed the way you manage and go about aircraft on ground and sourcing parts?
Yeah. Well, it's different now. Pre-COVID, we had a pretty large list of vendors to select from. Unfortunately, some of those vendors are no longer able to provide services for us. They've either gone into bankrupt, financial hardship, or they're just not there. So now the list is down to 3. It's always good to have options. And I would say right now we're probably using 3 or 4 vendors, whereas we had a multitude of vendors. So that is challenging. You say, okay, well, if a person says they don't have a part, or if a company says if they don't have the part, we could just simply, in the past, we could just simply, okay, check with other vendors. And as standard practice, I would always have my team, at least receive three or 4 different quotes just for comparison. But now that's not the case. Now we're like, okay, if whoever has it, let's just go with them, and get the part moving to the aircraft.
Right. Have you seen that $7 rivet all of a sudden become a $35 rivet? Because
that's happening as well. AOG fees are have multiplied. And you're right. The price has gone up on a lot of these parts. And, again, when you look at it from the cancellation loss, okay, are we going to pay for that $30 rivet, or are we going to lose the $300,000 loss of revenue? So of course we're going to pay for it, and they know we're going to pay for it.
Right. Yeah. That's an easy answer for sure.
Right.
Obviously, there's not as many flights in the air, and you've seen pictures in the news about planes just parked, right, waiting because they're not being utilized. Are you in a position now with this where you'll go and pull parts off of other planes that happen to be in the same market?
Yeah. We do that. We do that quite often.
Okay.
Cannibalize. Or, we rob from a plane that we already have, which we know that's going to be sitting for a while. And so, Roswell it's a pretty popular spot right now as far as sourcing, I think, with all the airlines, man, because many of the airlines, the majors, park their aircraft there in a Roswell location. That is one of our areas that we look at.
Yeah. Interesting. So that means that you and I need to start a little side hustle.
There you go.
You're
right. Yeah, because ultimately we're still going to need the part. Even though you're robbing it, you're still going to need that part. When the aircraft go back to return to revenue service.
So let's talk about some technology advancements, right? And I'm specifically talking kind of about everything in the evolution of a pen, of rivet continues to advance. Have you seen that parts last longer, or they're easier to swap out just to the natural evolution of how things develop and improve?
Not really. To our amazement, we have a new fleet. We're purchasing new aircraft, and it sort of amazes me how that here we are. This is $100 million piece of equipment. A $100 million vehicle, and within 30 days we find that parts start breaking or parts start needing to be replaced. And so I can't really say that the technology has made it's good. I mean, it's job justification. I'm glad the parts break, because I get to go out and buy them. If they come up with the perfect vehicle, I'm like, well, there's no need for AOG because there will never be an aircraft on ground. But no, from my viewpoint, I still see that there's still a lot of parts that come out, and there's so many parts on the aircraft, as something is bound to break, or there's a defect that's going to take place, and it's going to require backfilling.
Yeah. So so you just brought it up. I don't know if this is a loaded question or not, so if I apologize, I put you on the spot. But how many parts are on an airplane?
I don't know. I really don't know. I actually Googled it once, but I didn't have an answer. Googled it. I mean.
Well, you could have made something up, and I'd be like, okay, that's
you would believe it. Huh? It's just sound convincing.
50,000. That sounds all right. So, one thing that we've spoken about on the Uptime Logistics before is kind of 3D printing and the ability to literally make parts on the spot in the moment. Have you heard about 3D printing and how that?
I've heard about it, but you know what? I haven't heard about it through any of our vendors or our suppliers.
Gotcha.
And so I'm sort of unaware of that technology. But from what I understand, it's really amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds good in a PowerPoint presentation when you're trying to pitch something, but I think what you're saying is the reality to have that level of printing and making a part in the moment is not quite there, at least in your industry right now. So.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we're talking with Michael Chipman, and he's our mission critical logistics specialist, and we really appreciate his involvement. So what do you think about any advice that you would give to folks that want to get into aviation, and specifically with with AOG. You know, there's people out there that just thrive in controlled chaos and hey, I want to be the guy that, or the gal that, helps fix the problem and succeed. So what advice would you have for folks that may be interested in mission critical logistics for a career?
Yeah. And definitely you have to be that type of person who can juggle multiple priorities and that thrives on, like you said, chaos. And because every day is different. We never know exactly what part is going to break. We never know where that part's going to be required. And so when you come into work and you have, oh man, like I indicated before, you have these passengers that are grounded, they're like wondering, and you're like, why, what's going on? There was an instance where there was a cheerleading team and they competed all year long and they were trying to get to Florida. They had made it to the Nationals. They were going to Florida. And they were so excited, man. I think in middle grade, maybe eighth grade or something like that. The flight gets canceled. And they are just devastated. They're devastated. And so what do you do? Now, in that case, we were lucky. Our president of the company, he actually chartered an aircraft for them. Obviously, we can't do that for everyone. We can't. So that's a happy story, but we can't do that for everyone. So you definitely have to be able to handle stress. Because it's going to happen, and you have to have a tough skin. That's when I do my interviews and I bring people on board. I say, "Look here, this is what's going to happen, guys. This is what's to be expected. You can't." And the question that I ask is, what do you do? How do you handle stress? If they give me the answer, you know what? I like just get up and walk out, and walk around for 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, well, no, you're not the person for the job because you have to stay in the fire, and sometimes you feel like you're hanging on by the skin of your teeth. But it's also rewarding. It's rewarding to know that, you've helped people who have planned for years, perhaps, to, take their children on vacation. And like you said, the weddings, for them to actually finish that and complete their destination. And that's really rewarding. It's beneficial.
Yeah. Putting yourself in the proverbial seat, if you will.
Yeah, we've all been there. Yeah.
Yeah. Of walking in there and understanding everybody has, not a purpose, but everybody's sense of being important. This is important to me. It's not for us to judge. It's the simple fact of being in their shoes and understanding how important it is to find a $7 rivet.
Right.
So, they can.
Yeah.
That's
I will never complain again, if my flight gets canceled, because now I know it's for the safety. It is for the safety of the passengers ultimately.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Chip, I can't thank you enough for coming on and having a little conversation about us. Mission critical logistics covers, like you said, military and civilian, and it's been great to learn a little bit about not only the process, but the physical movement, but the thought process and having the right mindset to manage that line of business. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Doug.
All right. And I'd like to thank our audience, obviously, for joining us today on Uptime Logistics. It's powered by Cap Logistics. You can find more information about the show in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And please visit Cap Logistics for all of your transportation and logistics needs. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.